We were all on the floor over there looking. We couldn't find it. That's so funny. If that's the only thing we forget tonight, that's a success, you know? That's a success. Look around the room. Aren't we excited for Sisterhood Summer Night? So excited. Somebody said, why don't we have cops out there directing traffic? And I was like, for Sisterhood? They're like, yeah, the parking lot's full. I was like, oh, well, I guess we're going to have to schedule that for next time. Where's Miss Jerry? Where you at? Miss Jerry, we'll have it ready for you next week, I promise. She said, well, you didn't consult me. I would have told you we need them. If you ever want to know what's going on around here, you need to ask Miss Jerry. She doesn't mind telling you either. She'll tell you in a heartbeat. So we are so excited that you are here. Welcome to Sisterhood. If you don't attend Genesis Metro and you're just here with us tonight, we're so glad that you're here. Please come back. As they said, we'll be meeting 6 times this summer, 5 times for Bible study. So we're going to jump right in, as they said. Yeah, when we first decided to do this, it was a little bit of an undertaking. I've been threatening to write a study for years, and so we finally got it done. So I am as excited as you are, maybe more excited to see where this takes us and where it goes. If you know the story of Ruth at all, it's just 4 chapters in the Bible. The whole book is 4 chapters, but it is packed full of intrigue and drama and just a classic good Old Testament story, right? But there's so much in the book of Ruth and so much in her story. So we'll start out. This is the legacy of yes. Tim and I preached a few weeks ago about this topic, and it sprung and it just kind of sat in my brain. You ever do that where you fall upon something and then it just sticks in there and it just won't go away? So I started paying attention to it and started trying to figure out how maybe this topic could just stay with us all summer and figure out how we keep saying yes to God when he's calling us to something. So that's why we have the legacy of yes, because I think in today's age, especially since COVID, we've learned a lot of no's. Don't you guys agree? We have a lot of no's going on. So we're going to try to change the course of that. You might ask yourself, am I a yes person or a no person? You know, you might just ask yourself that as we start the study. You might just put that at the top somewhere in your journal. Am I a yes person or a no person? You might have to ask your family to help you. Some of you think like, oh, I'm a yes. And everybody would say, oh, no, you're not. You're a no, right? If you were here yesterday with us at Genesis Metro in our services, we talked about personality types. If you are a yes person and you can raise your hand and tell me you're a yes person and I'm an I. Look at that. If you are a no person, raise your hand. Do you see here how quiet the no people were? It's because most eyes are up for anything on the disc profile, right? So I wanted to tell you, when I was trying to think back, like, man, when was a time that I learned what this concept was? Because what we're gonna find in Ruth chapter 1 is, and that's where we're gonna be tonight, just Ruth chapter 1. We're not even getting all the way through Ruth chapter 1. You know me, this thing might turn into like 20 weeks, I don't know, we'll see. If you've never done a Bible study with me, I struggle to get through. I want to know all the fine granular details of every verse. I want to know, like, well, what color was the room? Like, what was the table made out of? I mean, who else was there? I try to find everything I can, so we may never get through it. We'll see. But I was trying to ask myself, when did I learn this in my life? I've grown up knowing who God was, grew up in a church and grew up in a Christian home, and this concept is not foreign to me about who God is and what he might be asking of us. But in my life, I was like, when did I learn this? And I really got all the way back to the summer of 2002 when we moved to Texas. And when we moved to Texas, we knew that God had called us to start a church, to basically leave everything we knew. Tim was already in ministry, he was already pastoring, but we were in a denomination that was legalistic, it was very conservative, but it was more than that on the conservative side. It was full of legalism. So we were in a church culture where we were just strapped and we couldn't do much for God. So we would get real excited, we'd take all the students to like church camp in the summer, and then we'd come home and it was a little bit disheartening, right? And so we just decided we can feel God calling us and pulling us. And Tim would talk about these things, and I would tell him, like, shh, don't let people hear you asking questions. Like you don't ask these things out loud. I was more of a rule follower then than I am now, which is kind of anti my personality, but I didn't want to rock the boat too much. And so I remember us talking about it at home, and then he sat me down one day and he said, what would you think if we did actually move to Texas? And I want to show you the picture of our family at the time. We had a baby. This is old. I had to scan this thing in. That is Jordan. That is baby Jordan. He leads worship here now. That's free of wrinkles. Look at baby Tim and Carrie, also, right? Don't you look back and you're like, man, those wrinkles came on quick, didn't they? Quick. They hit us like a ton of bricks. But that's us in the summer of 2002. It's funny, I noticed I have an Old Navy snakeskin belt on that I still wear to hold up pants. It is still going. So Old Navy, quality. Go ahead. Don't even worry about the other brands. Just go with Old Navy. All right, you can take that off. This is who we were in the summer of 2002. And I remember Tim asking me, what do you think if we moved to Texas? And I was like, let's do it. Yeah. I'm an I personality at the time, IS. I didn't have much D in me because there wasn't any occasion to use that. Now I've developed that and it charts that way. But I was like, yeah, let's go. I'm ready. I'll get us packed up. And at the same time, it was hard to leave the people we loved. Anytime you move, has anybody else moved across the country or across states that you didn't know anyone? And it's difficult to do that. But I was also very excited, it'll be so great. We'll move there, we'll get jobs with our degrees. It'll be fine. It'll be wonderful. And then we moved here and we couldn't find a job anywhere. We couldn't find a job anywhere. It was during the tech bust, and everybody was finding a job in DFW. We also had no connections. We didn't know anyone. We didn't go to college with anyone here. So, we didn't have anybody up in the interview rooms going, yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, that's great. We had no chance. So we're waiting tables, working at daycares. I eventually, within the first few months, I got pregnant with Titus. It was not planned. And so now I was going to have 2 kids. And you know how that goes. You're having to calculate in tolls and childcare, and is my paycheck even going to cover the cost it's going to take to find childcare and cover all this other stuff? So I ended up starting a daycare in my home so that I could have my kids with me and I didn't have to pay all that stuff. And that's how we existed until God started settling things out. Now, if you had told me at that kitchen table in 2002 that we would move here to start a church, and then Tim would be waiting tables and I would be starting a daycare within a year of moving here, nothing worked out like we planned, absolutely nothing. We thought we would move and start a Bible study. That turned into kind of weirdness and we had to shut that down. We had to move across, we were in East McKinney, and we were we can't really, if we're going to start a church in Frisco, which was a brand new budding community, this was all farmland, how are we going to do that if we don't live there? So we had to find a house, which we bought a house on a waiter's salary. You guys, talk about God intervening. But if you had told me in June of 2002, when I said, yeah, let's do it, that it was going to unfold that way, I might have stopped to count the cost. And often what I remember about God is he doesn't always tell us all of the story. He doesn't give you the end of it because it might scare you so much that you would never say yes, right? It might be you don't need to know that because I'm going to put you on a need to know basis. You're going to try to control the whole thing. So the least you know, the better off you're going to be. Now, all of you that like information and like expectations, you don't enjoy that part of following God, do you? You would like to know the plan. You would like to see the timeline. You would like to know how much it's going to cost, how much time it's going to take, how many people you're going to need, how much of your day it's going to take. But he often does not give us those details. So when I thought about how did I learn to follow God? That was a big lesson for me. I never imagined this room. I never imagined this space. We did not know what God would do. We just knew he put it on our heart to move here, so we did. So there we go to start the night. Are you a yes or a no? Right? Number 2, I want to ask another question. Are you resistant to change or are you excited about change? Raise your hand if you love change. There's a few. And if you hate change, you avoid it. Okay. I think that's most people. All right, the last thing I'm going to ask you before we get started, this one's a little more serious. But I think that by the end of this study, This is my goal for you. My prayer is that each of you would be able to say yes to this question. Do you know how to hear from God? Do you know how to hear from God? It's important that you know how to hear his voice. It's important that you understand the difference between his voice and your voice, between his voice and your neighbor's voice, between his voice and your spouse's voice sometimes. It's important that you know how to hear from God. We cannot be yes women if we don't know what God is saying and when he's speaking. All right, let's get started in Ruth chapter 1. We are gonna start, now I'm gonna go through these. We're gonna hit, I think 1 through 18 tonight. And I'm gonna tell it just a few verses at a time so we can chunk it out. And we're gonna go in linear order. It will be pretty easy to follow, all right? So in Ruth chapter 1, to give you a little bit of a background, this is during the time of the Judges, which is the actual first sentence. You can go ahead and put verse 1 up there. During the time of the Judges, there was a famine in the land, and the land is Judah, Bethlehem to be specific, but on the west side of where the children of Israel had settled out. So this is long before, when it says it's during the time of Judges, it's before there was a king of Israel. And the first king of Israel was King Saul. The second was David, of course, King David. So this is before there was any kings or royal family or anything established, right? This is when the judges were ruling Israel, which means all the tribes each had a judge that would represent them, and that's who established order, and you know, they had cases and they had, you know, fights and arguments, and somebody had to rule the land. As we know, when you have people, you have problems. Anybody know that? Anybody work with people? More people, more problems, right? So you got to have somebody with order. So this is during the time of Judges, all right? There was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. All right, easy enough. Moab, just so you know, we're going to go ahead and put the map up there, and then we're going to go back to verse 2. But Moab is on the other side of the Dead Sea from Bethlehem. So you can see there at the top, Bethlehem. So they would have had to go up north, around in the mountainous area, and down to Moab over on the east side. And that is, just so you know, modern day Jordan, as it were today. All right, verse 2. The man's name was Elimelech. Say that 5 times really fast. You don't have to, but I love that the eyes did it with me. Elimelech. And his wife's name was Naomi. What a beautiful name. The names of the 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. That's how you say his name, just like a K at the beginning. Chilion, they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. All right, so put our map back up. You see the map, and you need to know that they're Ephrathites, which means they come from the tribe of Ephraim. Ephraim, as you know, let's just get all this history out of the way. I mean, I don't like the history. 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph was one of the tribes, of course. Remember the 12 brothers, and they sold them into slavery, and then they all came back around, and God lifted them all up, and then they all got the lands they promised, and all of those things. I just summarized lots of stuff in the Bible and then probably missed a lot of details. But Joseph had 2 sons. He's the only one of the 12 sons that got 2 tribes, right? So the others, only their oldest son was given order, but Joseph, 2 of his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were given land, essentially. So these are from Joseph, from the tribe of Ephraim. That is this family. It's Elimelech and Naomi and their 2 boys. Okay, verse 3. Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was left with her 2 sons. So they move all the way across because there's a famine, there's no food, they're going to find food. Sometime after they move there, he dies. Verse 4, just the very first part of it says her sons took Moabite women as wives. So they get married. One was named Orpah and one was named Ruth. If you've been alive long enough to have ever watched the show Oprah when it was on TV, this is who she was named for. Did you know that? But they spelled it wrong on the birth certificate. You're welcome. Senseless knowledge that will never do you any good, but now you know. So Orpah and Ruth are her daughters-in-law. So they get married, and now here they all are. So the first point I want to make tonight is this. Detours that open doors. Detours that open doors. Life begins to take some detours. Right now, everything's peaceful. She's married, they've moved. You know, she said yes to that. They've moved across the way. They got there. It's about 50 miles from Bethlehem to Moab as you go all the way across. But it would have taken them 7 to 10 days they were walking, you understand, right? Just remember that, right? Maybe somebody had a camel, but I don't know. I don't know what their level of wealth was, but that would have been like the highest form of transportation in the day would have been a camel. So they've traveled there, they've settled, they've got their 2 boys, and everything's fine, but life is about to become difficult. So we see Naomi in her difficulty. She really starts to take on grief, right? Her husband has passed away, and though her sons are married, thank God for women and daughters-in-law, we'll get to that in a moment, she's lost her husband. That's a grievous time. My mom was 57 when my dad died. She had to go back to school and get a degree to be able to make money for the second half of her life because she never finished school, right? So that is difficult when you are still young enough that you've got life ahead of you and you lose your husband, your spouse, the one who provides the livelihood. So we see that Naomi really grief became her bitterness. And we're gonna see that unfold. It doesn't tell us this yet. And I tried real hard not to get too far ahead, but what we see is Naomi would become defined by grief. She would become defined by loss. And it turned into this bitter place inside of her. Grief can do that in an instant. Grief can swallow us up whole if we give in to the dark places that it wants to drag us into. And man, does it want to drag us into it. If you've been through any sort of loss, if it's a spouse or a parent, God forbid, a child, then you know. They say there's no greater grief on this planet than losing a child. I know that many women in this room, just statistically speaking, have at least miscarried. And that's difficult. We don't really talk about that a lot. I lost 2 by miscarriage when I was in my younger years, and it's incredibly emotional. It's incredibly painful. You have a lot of questions and a lot of doubt. Grief is a funny, fickle thing. And even though we believe and we know they're with God and we have the hope that we have in him, grief still wants to pull us down. So Naomi, man, she struggled and grief became her bitterness. And I would say that she got to the place that change became an unwelcome guest. So while it seemed she was eager to move across country, essentially, and move to the other side of the Dead Sea, move across the Great Sea, she would come to find that she didn't embrace change much anymore. Change would become something she was incredibly averse to and angry about. But again, we have these detours that open doors. And sometimes those doors are not to light. When detours open a door to grief and the grief door flies open and really it's more comfortable to walk through it and let it swallow you whole, that is an option sometimes. It can be job loss. It can be, as we said, death. It could be friendships. It could be your marriage. It could be all kinds of things. Grief comes in all forms. And so what we see with her is the famine forced them out of their home and they moved across. And now she gets there, her husband dies, and man, she's gonna have a hard time finding some joy. What's beautiful is what happens in that her sons get married, right? So they get married. And as I mentioned, thank God for daughters-in-law. I'm gonna say, I have one, almost 2 daughters at 31 days. Are we at 31? You can go ahead and show them. You know, I'm just saying, this is Emma and Kennedy. They both hate the spotlight, and Kennedy's literally lowering her hat. Please don't look at me. I'm not even gonna tell you where she's at. They both are like this. I'm like, I'm sorry, you married into the wrong family. I'm so sorry. We frequently just post pictures of each other up here, right? But I will tell you, for me as a boy mom, I related to Ruth, but also just for a moment, any boy moms in the room, how stinky is it at your house? So a few years ago, I decided I'm just not going upstairs anymore, because let's say there's 17 stairs, rises up. About stair 9, the smell hits you. Is anybody else? And we're not slobs, but You can't keep it clean. You clean it, and then they use the shower, and now it's funky again. I mean, how many of you, I'm just like, close the shower curtain. So look, this is how you close a shower curtain. You grab it, and you just slide it right across. Still telling the last one that. Because what happens when it stays folded? It gets moldy and stinky, and that's really the smell is some of that. Also, the toilet situation is not to be spoken of in public. It's terrible. Just dirty. They don't see it. They don't know. They don't even see it. You're like, how? You know, I wish I could tell you it gets better, but you just learn to not care anymore. You burn as many Bath & Body Works candles as you can, and you call it a day, because it's just better. So I go up there once a month to pre-clean before Tim lets me get my house clean one time. And I'm always like, I'm so sorry. And sometimes it's so bad, I just slap a sticky note on the door and says, do not clean. Just don't even come in here. You know what? Not even you. I can't do it. Boys are just gross, right? They just are. I'm sorry for all the guys that are watching or seeing this or in the room. But thank God that she had one semblance of joy. These girls that came into her life, Orpah and Ruth. And I thought to myself, man, for a boy mom to have lost so much, there's something in that. So read 4 and 5. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was left without her 2 children and without her husband. It's interesting how it states that. She was left without her 2 children and without her husband, but thank God for daughters-in-law because she had them with her. I wish she had a friend around to say, it's just a season. Don't you just, sometimes you need to hear that. It's just a season. You're going to get through this. Maybe you're in a devastating time or you've walked through a devastating time. I know there's stories in this room that they went to bed one night married with a happy marriage and they woke up the next day and the whole world fell apart. And little did they know what had been happening right under their noses. I know people who have buried children, teenagers, young adults that are in this room. I know there's women who have suffered through job loss unimaginable and do not yet have an answer. There are women in this room that have been abused, that have been mocked, that their abuser has been in their life for years and they're still trying to get away from it. There's all kinds of stories with the woman sitting next to you or perhaps down your row. But I will tell you, when life starts sucking you in, you need someone to tell you it's just a season. We have that promise in Scripture over and over that it will pass, but when you're in the middle of it and you're the one living it out and someone says that, sometimes you have a hard time even seeing that that is possible. Have you lived through that yet? That maybe someone does, you have a little chirpy, Pollyanna, that's your friend, and they, it's gonna be fine, it's just a season, or they, just give it to God, all these like Christian platitudes, and you're like, I don't even know what that means, give it to God. How do I give it to God? Because guess what? I'm going to bed with it tonight, and I'm getting up tomorrow with the same thing, and I don't really know how to get away from myself. That is the problem. If you, depending on your personality type, you're in a prison of perception that you're just rolling this thing over and over and over. And if you are the beginning and the end of the counsel that's walking you through that, you are in trouble and you know it. So how do you get through that? How do you understand that it is just a season? I will tell you what I've learned in my life is it's about a week of sucky. And then you can breathe again. And I don't mean that lightly, but I mean you won't feel as strongly about this thing in a week that you do right now, and the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that. So in that first few days, if you can pray and talk to God and open your word and remember what he has said to you. King David, who we will talk about in a moment, he always says things like this when he's writing in Psalms. He says, I reminded myself in the night of what you did for me. I reminded myself of your great works. I reminded myself who created the earth. I reminded myself who was for me. I reminded myself of all the good things that you've done for my family. He would remember remember, he would recall, whether he journaled or he said it out loud or he wrote a song about it, whatever it was that he expressed it, he sometimes just had to remind himself. So when the detours, that open doors, start to pull you in to grief or perhaps a fleeting moment of joy, but you get right down into it, you remind yourself of what God has done, that it is just a season. All right, let's read on in verse 7. So basically they hear that the famine is over. So she's here with her daughters-in-law, her husband's gone, her kids are gone, and now she's like, you know what? We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back home. I'm going home. Like, I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm going home. So verse 7, she left the place where she'd been living in Moab, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law. They were traveling with her. And they traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. So they start out together, all 3 of them. And then Naomi stops. Who knows how long they'd been on this journey. And she's like, hey, each of you should go back to your mom's house. You should just go home yourself. You should go back home. Fair enough. They're already in the land that they were born in. They kind of are home, but maybe they just need to get back to their town. And she's like, go ahead. I bless you. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown me and the dead. Thank you for being so kind to me, but you should go home. And verse 9 says, may the Lord grant, she blesses them, may the Lord grant each of you rest on the house. And she kissed them and they wept loudly. Ugh, this scene is like the scene of a Hollywood movie. I don't know if you guys are watching all the Chosen and the David series. It's like, it's so good. It's just pulling me in. But I think, man, this could be a scene that she says, hey, you guys, you should go home. You don't need to come back with me. We don't need to go 10 days of travel for you to just leave your own home. You stay here. Maybe perhaps she knows what it's like to leave her home as a young wife. Do you think? Maybe perhaps she knows how hard it will be, that she's empathetic and she has this moment of reason where she's like, you don't need to go with me. Seriously, thank you, but it's okay. Has anyone ever pushed people away when you actually need them, but you want to be strong and say, I'm fine, thank you, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. Boy, that's been plaguing women since the Bible. Do you see that? How are you? Need help? No, I got it. You need help, but you don't want to say it, right? I don't want to inconvenience anyone. I don't want anybody to be bothered. I don't want anybody to know that I don't have it all together and that I can't keep everything rolling, right? This is my problem. Therapy is happening right here on the stage. So you see, like sometimes we just say, no, I'm fine. You guys, please stop. Don't bother yourself about it. I mean, if I've heard that once, I've heard it 100 times from women. We all struggle with that. Point number 2, and we're going to kind of pivot here, is that decisions rooted in conviction cannot be deterred. So what we're going to see is we have these detours in life, but then we have to start making some decisions. Decisions that are based on conviction that God has given us cannot be deterred. So as we keep reading, keep that in mind. Verse 10 says this. So both the girls look at her and said, no, we want to go with you. We insist on going to Bethlehem. We want to go and live in Judah with you. But she says, please return home. Why do you want to go with me? Now listen to the sarcasm in her voice. Or just, maybe the ever so slight passy-aggressy, okay? Return home. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? I'm like, first of all, wow. She just got right out there, right? Go home, go on. I'm too old to have another husband. Now we're going to be like, our pets' heads are falling off, all the things. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to be pregnant and bear sons. Wow, she is committed to this role. Even if I thought there was still hope for a man to ever touch me again and that he would become my husband tonight and I would get pregnant and have the kids tonight, would you be willing to wait till they grew up? I don't think so. I'm just like, how? I wanted to know all of her intonation. I'm sorry, God, if I'm inferring, but it's just right there for the taking. She says, would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? Like basically, are you really going to wait that long? And I feel like it's one of those like thought bubbles that's like, no one said anything. And then like you had this like rant that's going off, right? That's kind of what they're like, we want to go with you. And she just goes off on him. Would you be willing to wait that long? Could you restrain? Basically, could you keep yourself from another man's bed that long for like 14 years? I don't think so, girls. I'm like, wow. I mean, she's just throwing all the things out there. All right, but middle of verse 13, no, my life is much too bitter for you to share. My life is much too bitter for you to share because the Lord's hand has turned against me. So you see that bitterness that I talked about earlier? Her grief has made her bitter. Her grief has turned her into this like bitter spout. The Bible refers to it as a bitter root that takes hold and it just begins to build a whole ecosystem inside of you. And now you're going to have to do double, triple, quadruple the work to get it out and get in there and garden that thing so that the weeds don't grow around it. But man, this is a classic case. And who can blame her? She's lost everything, but let's learn from her life. So now in 14, they're weeping loudly. You can imagine, I think about, the movie Little Women, Sense and Sensibility. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where like the scenes where the daughters are crying and they're all upset and the mom's upset and, oh, I have the fainting couch. I always think, what is that? We need that today. And they're just going crazy and they've lost their minds and they're red and they've got their fan and, just this dramatic scene. I don't have girls. Some of you are like, that was yesterday, actually, at our house. We don't have a lot of tears. Where's the girl moms? You're like, we got a lot. Okay, do you see this on a regular basis? Just suddenly things turn into a scene of drama. And you're like, oh my goodness. You just need to pick out a pair of shorts for school. But I've heard from several girl moms that if they don't pick that out the night before, forget it. You're not getting there on time. And even then, they might change their minds, which we as women always have in parentheses. Asterisk, I might change my mind, right? Anybody else? So we have these girls, they're all weeping loudly. It's a painful scene. I'm making light of it, but their hearts are broken. All they have left is each other. No one in 10 years has produced an heir. Do you see that? You remember that was a big deal back then, right? The most recent thing we have is like old English movies or something from the 1700s that says, it's all about the heir. These women have not produced an heir in 10 years. So they are barren for the day. They would be called that most likely. And besides that, they've lost their husbands and their father-in-law. And she is distraught and angry and bitter, not only their own grief, but they're sort of managing hers as well. Do you see that? I can remember that in different losses we've had in our family, in my extended family, is you're feeling the loss, but it's not your spouse. It's my mother's spouse or my father-in-law's spouse or an aunt or an uncle. It's not my sister, it's their sister. You can imagine, I don't want to make this grief about me. It's really, they're the ones experiencing the loss, but you do feel a way about it. And so you're managing your own crisis, your own emotions about losing something, but you're also helping to manage other family members because of your love for them. And that's where these two women are sitting. So what we see with Ruth is a beautiful thing. It says, again, they wept loudly, verse 14. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth clung to her. Ooh, underline that. Ruth clung to her. If you have a Bible app, you just click it and you hit a color and it'll highlight it for you. If you have your Bible, you need to underline that. Ruth clung to her. And Naomi says, look, verse 15, your sister-in-law is going to go back. Because Orpah this is the kiss of goodbye. Not like a betrayal kiss. There's nothing wrong with Orpah deciding to go home. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. She was given permission to choose that, and she did. It's okay. She went back home. She's like, so Naomi's like, Ruth, she's going to go back home. You should go. Go back to your people. Go back to your gods. Go with her. It's fine. So this is the first time we see God thrown into the mix. Little g, right? We see, go back home. Go back to your own gods. You don't have to come with me. And this is where we see Ruth and her grief leading her to loyalty. So where Naomi And that grief led her to bitterness, and she became bitter. We see Ruth, her grief, how she's processing this, leads her to loyalty to her mother-in-law. She faced the same grief as Naomi, but she had a very different response. She was ready to walk away from family and familiarity, from her faith, her gods, and embrace a foreign faith and a future. And this was a decision. This is where it goes back to the main point we're talking about. This is a decision that's rooted in conviction that cannot be deterred. How else could you make this decision? I had to think through this for a minute. How could you leave your parents, your siblings, your aunts and uncles, your favorite place to shop, your favorite place to get this, your favorite place to get that, and go somewhere you've never been before and you likely will never return? How else could you make this decision? Would you decide that without the Spirit of God telling you to do so? Has anybody else just moved across the country on a whim and left your whole family? If you did, we probably need to counsel a little bit on that, right? But how else could she come to this decision other than it being God-inspired? Now, again, we don't have that written out for us that says, and God spoke to her in the night. Sometimes we get those details, like with Mary. It's like we get the whole scene. She's asleep. She's like 14. The angel shows up in her bedroom like in a dream, but like, okay, I mean, he's there. It's like, you're going to have a baby, but you're not going to sleep with a man. She's like, what? Okay. I mean, we get all those details, and I want all those here, but we don't have them. What I can infer is that someone doesn't just decide something so heavy without feeling something calling them toward that. And you might come across as the crazy person in the room, but let time bear out, and you will see the hand of God will confirm everything that he said to you play out in your life. That's all the approval that you need sometimes to follow him. It's just to wait and watch. You know that he told you, and you can't convince everyone else, but you just start walking in it. You just start walking in it, and then you watch a confirmation. And then you go a few more days, and you see another confirmation. Then you go a few more days, and you see another confirmation. And you just keep waiting and watching and walking until he just keeps confirming everything he told you in the quiet, everything that you can't really explain to people, he starts confirming. And guess what? He'll redeem your name at some point too, just so everybody knows that it was God who called you. I would submit to you that she did not come to this decision lightly. She didn't just decide to leave everything, but I will tell you where she stood clinging to Naomi in such a passionate way, we can see the conviction of the Spirit pouring over her as she decides to follow what God is leading her to in her future. Now, we have the luxury of knowing the end of this story, which we're not going to get into tonight. I didn't want a spoiler alert if you don't know. But I will tell you what's beautiful about this is that legacy can begin in the in-between stages. That's what I see here. What we know about Ruth, because we do have the whole story, is that she has this gigantic legacy of faith. Did you know she is the great-grandmother of King David? Ruth is the great-grandmother of King David. How is that possible? She has no children. Clearly, a child pops up at some point. So you may not know what's next. Your family may not know what's next. The person you're following may not know what's next, but you have a God who does. That's all that you need. You may not know, but you just know it has to be yes, because she is in between loss and a future. She's in between mourning and dancing. She's in those in-between phases when somebody just needs to say it's just a season, and she can see it. Who she was and who she's going to be. Do you see that she is in between in these things, and legacy can most certainly start in the in-between. And I think in our culture and our society, we try to rush through the in-between times. We try to get through those really quickly. That's where the convenience factor that we're used to, that we like, that we pay for, that we make sure that we get, we make sure we pay for that. Like, you want to look, I don't want any other search on Amazon but Prime. Thank you so much for that button. No, I ain't waiting 4 days. Are you kidding me? I'm like, what is this? What a spoiled society. Like, we're having this worship night Sunday night, and now we have this dress code, and we have to wear hunter green, gray, or gray. Who came up with that? Me. I did. But I'm like, I don't know what I have that's that color. We were told not to wear white and black, so I'm on there. I need something quick. I even did it this morning, and I'm like, man, I did it again. What is this? I don't want to walk in a store. I don't want to walk in a store ever. I don't enjoy it. I don't like it. Who wants to be in a dressing room trying on crap and you're like, my body looks disgusting in this mirror. I try never to look at it. Why am I standing here with a 3-way mirror so I get all sides? And this lighting, what is the deal with the lighting? I'm like, if they want you to buy stuff, they should make it like you look amazing, like a glam mirror that transforms you in there, right? But I guess they don't want to sell anything. I don't know. I don't ever go in a store if I don't have to. But the convenience is what we pay for. So we want to get through all of these in-between seasons where we don't know what's happening. We don't know the end. We don't have the plan spelled out. We don't really understand what tomorrow is going to look like. But somehow we've said yes. Why? It can only be God-breathed. It can only be God-breathed. A declaration of yes in your life only comes by way of the Spirit of God telling you to do that. It only comes by way of, you're going to change your major. You're going to skip right through it. You're going to switch careers. You are absolutely going to take your kid out of that event, out of that activity because of the environment he's around, and everybody's going to think you're crazy, but you're doing it. Whatever your decision is, sometimes God gives it to you and you just have to say yes. Let's look at verse 16. So Ruth, she's like, please don't let me go. Please don't make me go. Don't urge me to leave you or turn back, please. And you can imagine, remember, they're weeping loudly. So she's weeping, tears falling down her face. Her voice could barely work. Does your voice box close up when you start crying? Mine does. I can't sing or talk anymore. It just shuts down. She's weeping through tears. Please don't urge me to turn back. Where you go, I will go. Now, this is a famous verse you've heard in weddings, but really it has more to do with following faithfully. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried right beside you. May the Lord deal with me ever so severely if even death separates you and me. And when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. I love it. I love it. I can't get enough of these women and their story. So Ruth says, yes, I am loyal. Yes, I am faithful. I am right beside you. I know what God can do. I will not leave. Even when I die, I'm going to make sure they bury me right beside you so that if you ever feel alone, you will find me. I believe past the moment that we can see right now. I believe that God can do something. What's beautiful is in Jeremiah 29:11, which is yet to be written, but we have the luxury of having now. What does it say? It says, I have a plan for your life. I have a plan. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to do what? Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Somewhere inside of her, she knew enough of this God, of her husband and her mother-in-law and his family, that she could see him, hear him, know his voice, and follow after it, even though it made no human sense whatsoever. She could feel it and she knew it. And my prayer for us is that at the end of this study, if you don't know how to follow that voice, you will know by the end of July how to follow after God and hear him in the noise and the grief and the nonsense. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for this time. Thank you that you have given us these women to study, to learn from. And even in their grief, though we start heavy in this book, even in their grief, what we see is an opportunity for us to learn something new, something fresh from your word. God, what I pray is that you would keep us coming back. You would hold us close to you. As Ruth pledged to do with Naomi, may the Lord deal with me ever so severely if I get 1 foot out of the line that he has given me to walk in. May the Lord deal with me ever so severely if I decide to do my own thing and ignore the very thing that he has called me to. May the Lord deal with me ever so severely should I decide to turn back when he has called me to keep moving forward. God, we sit in your hands tonight. We call upon your word. We ask for your spirit. We ask for blessing over our small groups and in our studies as we leave each other and go throughout this week and find you in the pages of your word. In Jesus' name, amen.